Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we are reading from I Will Build a Temple, the Juhu story by Giriraj Maharaj. Okay. So we'll continue with the reading from whatever has been left last time. While Prabhupada was in Bombay, Tamal Krishna instituted a morning class at Shivner, which was just a few blocks away from Bhogilal Patel's house. We would go to Seth Bhogilal's early in the morning to see Prabhupada, hoping to accompany him on his morning walk. Tamal Krishna Goswami wanted us to return to Shivner for the class. But when he complained to Prabhupada that it was time for class and the devotees did not want to go, Prabhupada replied, "That's all right. I have just come. They want to be with me." This is very common, is it not? When the Guru Maharaj comes, everyone wants to be with Guru Maharaj. Because everyone is interested in learning from Guru Maharaj what he is going to teach. The teaching is not just by talking. You should know that. Even by their behavior. When they meet someone, the way they receive them, they respect them, they exchange greetings with each other. Those are also some of the things which we need to imbibe, we need to learn and imbibe in us. So, when Prabhupada used to move around, all his disciples, you would have seen, there are lots of videos also we can see, lots of his disciples will move with him everywhere and just observe him very closely. That's very important, you know. One of the things that we need to understand is from Prabhupada's Lilamrita also, that Prabhupada, even when his Guru Maharaj, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj was saying anything, similarly Prabhupada's disciples also observed him very closely and learnt many things from him. Not that they were able to meet Prabhupada always. There are many disciples who could not meet Prabhupada regularly, you know. But once in a way they met. But then they could learn and grasp lots of things because, you know, they wanted to serve Prabhupada, both in terms of Vani and Vapu. So by that, in that process also, we also learn. So same thing, whenever Guru Maharaj comes, we also go with him, see him, observe what all he is doing and learn whatever we can do. Then he says that, so Shivner obviously went and complained that nobody is coming to Shivner. But Prabhupada said, doesn't matter, let them be with me because they all actually want to learn from me. Indirectly, that's what he said. We had also arranged outside programs with Prabhupada for potential donors. When we mentioned to Dr. Mohanlal Piramal, a textile magnate, Piramal Spinning and Weaving Mills, that Prabhupada was in Bombay, he was eager that Prabhupada should come to his home. Prabhupada accepted the invitation, telling us that we should go ahead and begin and that he would follow. He arrived while Achyutananda was singing bhajans and was ushered to a sofa on which he sat cross-legged and observed the bhajans and the devotees. After a while he said, "Chant Hare Krishna." So we did kirtan and then he spoke. After the lecture, our host wanted to feed us, especially Prabhupada. Prabhupada left, but we stayed behind to honor prasada and associated with our host. And associated with our host, his wife, his mother, and a few other family members. Later, Prabhupada questioned our method of preaching. He said, "This is not preaching. To go to some rich man's house and flatter him and sing a few songs and take prasada. Do you actually preach?" Yes, Tamal Krishna Swami said, "We preach very forcefully. We don't just flatter." Okay, well, all right then, Prabhupada replied. But soon thereafter, he introduced conditions for having outside program. He said that we should accept a program only if there would be a large donation or a large gathering at which people would take up chanting Hare Krishna. He also said that he didn't want the programs. Okay, it's echoing. I can't read it. He also said that he didn't want the programs to take away from our preaching at Juhu. So although the system we had devised for collecting funds for Vrindavan had been successful, we could understand that Prabhupada wanted our program to be pure. See, this is again, Prabhupada was not interested just in collecting funds. And I'm reminded of another incident in Mayapur connected with it, where Tamal Krishna Goswami and other disciples had gathered. And they were there to buy the land for Mayapur. And when they wanted to buy the land for Mayapur at that time, what had happened was, Prabhupada had come and asked, what are you doing? You're buying land. He said, yes. So Prabhupada said, we are not in the business of buying land. We have to, how many people are you preaching? He said, this village is very small. There are not many people. Prabhupada said, no, you have to go out and preach. So Prabhupada's mood was to preach. It was his pure intention. It was not an opportunity to make money, gather wealth and all this. That was not the objective of Prabhupada. Because you see, when someone goes to preaching, automatically some people are coming forward to give dakshina and all these things. That's fine. Small dakshina, what we get, we take it, we come and put it back in the temple. We give to the temple purpose. Sometimes some people also offer land. What to do with the land? What should we do? That also we should give it to the temple only. That is pure preaching. Not that somebody is giving me land, so I'll keep it for myself. I'll build a house later on because I'm not very sure how my devotional service will be now. Later on, will I still continue in devotional service? I do not know anything, so I'll have to secure myself, so I'll keep something for me. That should not be the intention. That way, our dependence on Krishna will never increase. The whole objective of Prabhupada's teaching was how to increase the dependence upon Krishna and how we become pure that way. And for that, whatever we get as donation or whatever we have, how we can give it in Krishna's service, whatever strength we have, whatever capabilities we have, how do we put it in Krishna's service and make ourselves pure? Prabhupada was interested only in making the devotees pure. He was not interested in anything, other things. And you find almost all his disciples have the same intention, So next, going back, he says here, the gates and entrances to Daskot were emblazoned with a family crest, a crowned pair of wooden sandals flanked by a prancing horse and lion. The front doors opened to a set of stairs, and the hallway to Prabhupada's wings, with marble flooring, gold-framed paintings along the wall, and ornate metal tables on whose marble tops were displayed decorative vases, Ming jades, ivory carvings, and other priceless traditional works of art. There was even an elevator up to the second floor. Bhogilal Patel had allotted Prabhupada a bedroom and a darshan room for meeting people, and across the way an area for Prabhupada's assistants, including his servant Srutakirti, and his Sanskrit editor Pradyumna. At the end of the darshan room was Prabhupada's usual low table and asana. The rest of the room was arranged for people to sit on the floor with chairs available for special guests. Same like what we have on the second floor. To get from the servants' area to the hallway, one had to pass by the doorway to the darshan room. When I passed one day, I saw Gargamuni and Tamal Krishna sitting opposite Prabhupada's desk, arguing with him. I was surprised. I had never seen disciples argue so vehemently with him. We are just wasting our time in India, Gargamuni was saying. Prabhupada clearly wanted them to stay. We are just like businessmen, one of them said. We are collecting money and making life members. Prabhupada was sympathetic to their frustrations, but told them, I want you to stay here. It is the spiritual master's desire that you stay here. So that is better. Isn't it service to go to America and preach? One asked. In America, the preaching is so much better. I was sitting off to this side, Shruta Kirti recalled, amazed at the intensity of my God brothers. Gargamuni and Tamal Krishna seemed relentless, but the more they were determined to leave India, the more Prabhupada was determined to have them stay. It was evident that Prabhupada considered the preaching work in India to be of the utmost importance. Seeing how upset Srila Prabhupada was squirming in the corner of the room, I also understood how hard it was to stay in India. Obviously, those days it was very, very difficult. Nowadays also we find it so much difficulties, is it not, in India? There are so many difficulties we face. Just imagine some 40 years back how bad the situation was. The situation was very bad at that time, So, about 1970s and all, really things were not at all good. It was so difficult to go from one part of India to another part. Many times now you have got the railway tracks, metro is coming, all these things. At that time nothing was there. Only the rickety vehicles were available, the Ambassador and only that Fiat. Nowadays you don't see, many of you may or may not have seen Ambassador and Fiat also. These are the vehicles, and maximum what speed it will not, even if it has to run, the roads were so bad. Everything was bad at that time, and so obviously people who are used to better lifestyle, coming here and trying to adjust, it was difficult for them. It was a fierce battle. The intensity of the negotiation was something I would have expected among peers rather than between spiritual master and disciple. Prabhupada wanted them to stay, and that was final. They argued that they needed to leave India to preach. At this time, the West was a fertile preaching field. Finally, in apparent disgust, Srila Prabhupada said, all right, you just chant your 16 rounds, follow the 4 regulatory principles, and do any damn thing you want. So he was totally frustrated with the argument. But then definitely they stayed by, they didn't go. When devotees staying in his Shivner flat, Mr. Mohata, who lived nearby, asked 1 or 2 of them to come to his home every morning and teach him about the Bhagavad-gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. Now at Bhogilal Patel's, Mr. Mohata complained to Prabhupada that when he asked the devotees questions, they could not answer. Brahmananda, who was one of Mr. Mohata's teachers, replied, when he asks questions, we read him the answers in your books. Prabhupada curled his lips and shook his head. He doesn't want to know what is in the books. He wants to know what you know. You would have heard many times Prabhupada saying this. You have to understand my teachings properly. He has said that in many places. You have to read my books very scrutinizingly. This is the word he has used in many places in his lectures. You have to read my books very scrutinizingly. And if you do not understand what he has written in the books, what to do? Prabhupada said, read it again. Read it again and again and again till the time you understand. So, I have also observed this, sometimes when we read Bhagavad-gita, Bhagavatam, some of the purports are not, we think that we have not understood it very clearly or some other thoughts come to us. Probably it could be this or that. But when we read that same thing again and again, or after giving a gap, when we read again, matter becomes very clear. This is from my experience, I'm saying. Like that many people would have different types of experiences here. So, very important, Prabhupada has never missed out anything in his books, in his purport. He has covered everything. Only thing is, we need to read and absorb what he has written clearly. And once we absorb it, it sticks to our mind and it remains always there. And Prabhupada has said that you have to philosophically be very strong and argue the points very clearly. Philosophically, we have to be strong. And how to be philosophically strong? Only by reading his books and listening to his lectures. And once we understand that correctly, once philosophically we are very clear what Prabhupada has written there, then anyone who comes to challenge us, it will become very easy to give them a reply. It will be very easy to answer those points. So exactly that's what Prabhupada is saying here. He is not interested. He said that Mr. Mohata is not interested in you reading my books and saying what I have written. He wants to know how much you have understood and how much you are able to explain on your own. How strong are you in your philosophy? So he says here, Prabhupada curled his lips and shook his head. He doesn't want to know what is in the books. He wants to know what you know. As I was passing by the door to Prabhupada's room one day, he motioned to me with his eyes to enter. Bharadraj's singing of Narottama Dasa Thakura's Gaurangere Dhuti Pada was playing from a new album of Kirtans, Every Town and Village, recorded live at the New York Temple. When it was over, Prabhupada looked up and said, "When I am no longer present, you can listen to this song and remember your spiritual master." It was a poignant statement that entered deep in my heart. I considered why Prabhupada had singled out that song. One verse says, Gauranga Gunete Jhure, Nityalila Tare Spure, Sajana Bhakti Adhikari. If anyone feels ecstasy and cries from appreciating Gauranga's transcendental qualities, he becomes eligible to perform pure devotional service. And I was confident that if I or we remembered Srila Prabhupada in that mood of appreciation, with such feelings of separation, we would get the same result. This is a very beautiful point. Actually, we should remember this. I am reading this again. If anyone feels ecstasy and cries from appreciating Gauranga's transcendental qualities, he becomes eligible to perform pure devotional service. And I was confident that if I or we remembered Srila Prabhupada in that mood of appreciation, with such feelings of separation, we would get the same result. One Sunday morning, we had an appointment with Ashok Birla, whom Tamal Krishna and I had been cultivating over a period of months. Ashok was different from the other, more staid Birlas. Once, when he greeted us at the Birla mansion on Mount Pleasant Road, he was wearing a short-sleeved silk shirt covered with American flags. And whereas the most affluent men, including the Birlas, usually rode in long Mercedes Benzes, Ashok traveled in a smaller, sportier BMW. After many months of cultivating him, we decided that the time had come to ask him for a donation, and we showed him the list of different parts of the Vrindavan project and how much each item would cost. After looking at the list, Ashok asked us what we wanted him to contribute for. We weren't exactly sure what to say, but I replied, "We thought that you could build a temple room, the single largest item on the list, an expense of 3 lakh of rupees." He immediately agreed, "Yes, I will do that." In fact, he considered so easily that we were thinking that maybe we should have asked for more. Practically everyone else we approached would offer a lesser figure, and then we would have to discuss and argue with them to convince them to give more. Anyway, he agreed to give 3 lakhs, and we were quite happy. Then before leaving, we informed him that Prabhupada was staying nearby at Bhogilal Patel's house, and we invited him to come and meet him. It was around 9, and he said that he would come to meet Prabhupada shortly before lunchtime. When we returned to Bhogilal Patel's house, Tamal Krishna informed Prabhupada about Mr. Birla's commitment for Vrindavan and told him that Ashok would be coming before lunch. Time passed, and after waiting until around noon, we phoned Ashok to see what had happened. It hadn't been possible for him to come in the morning, he said, but he would come in the afternoon. So Prabhupada took prasada. By evening, Ashok still didn't arrive, so we called him again, and this time he gave message that he would come the next morning. He will never come, Prabhupada said. He has given his money, that's enough. So many times when we go for raising funds, of course this temple is already built, but whenever this is some experience people have, raising funds for temple, Prabhupada said that you can always go and ask for life membership, and give them some benefit, something in return, and people will be volunteering to give the money because they are getting something in return. But many times you find that you have to meet the person again and again and again, and there is no guarantee that you will get it. But the perseverance is another very important point that we should remember. What Prabhupada has also said, one of these things comes, perseverance is very important, following up. Similarly, when we are also trying to make some persons devotees, what happens is people say, yes, I will come to the temple, I will meet you here for the program, I will come. These things always happen. It's not that they turn up, but then we don't give up so easily. We follow up with them. And some of them will turn up, some of them may not. Whoever is fortunate enough will come. Prabhupada says, whoever takes up to Krishna consciousness is fortunate. And whoever doesn't take up to Krishna consciousness is unfortunate. That's Prabhupada's statement. So we should remember this, and what we can do is, whenever we are calling anybody, just like these people who are following up with Ashok Birla, we have to do like that also. Prabhupada has also done that. That's the thing. Still the next morning we were hoping that Ashok would come. Will he come? He didn't come. We phoned his house and we were told that although he wouldn't be able to come, his mother could come, meet Prabhupada later that morning. Prabhupada was satisfied with that. Srimati Gopi Kumari Birla arrived right on time. Although she was a member of the richest family in India, one of the richest in the world, Mrs. Birla was very humble and respectful to Srila Prabhupada. Upon entering the room, she bowed down and offered her obeisances to him, and she sat at a respectable distance on the floor. Prabhupada immediately began preaching to her, quoting Sanskrit verses from the 2nd chapter of the 1st canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. She was a highly educated and cultured lady, who was also spiritually inclined. So she responded by quoting other verses in Sanskrit, and Prabhupada was very pleased with her. Before leaving, she again offered her respects, and afterwards Prabhupada commented, "She is a very nice lady." 3 months later, in Los Angeles, where I was recovering from my jaundice, Prabhupada told Brij Ratan Mohatta, our good friend from Bombay, and his wife, R.D. Birla's daughter, Ashok's mother came to see me in Bombay. Yes, very nice lady. She has arranged for 2 or 3 of your programs in her school, Mr. Mohata reported. We showed the series of slides of Prahlada Maharaja, I added. The children enjoyed it very much. We also held a Janmashtami program at the school. We were always ready to encourage both her and her students, and she did everything she could to encourage the spirit of Krishna consciousness. So some people are genuinely very favorable to Krishna consciousness. Some people are very genuinely helping out Prabhupada in his movements at that time also. Although he had faced lots of difficulties, at the same time he had also lots of well-wishers also in Bombay. Jai Gaurnathai ki jai. RadhaRasbihari ki jai. Okay. Before leaving Daskot for Juhu, Prabhupada asked everyone from Seth Bogilal's domestic staff who had been serving him to come to his darshan room. He gave each of them some dakshina, a monetary gift in appreciation for their service during his stay. I was surprised. I hadn't expected Prabhupada to give Krishna's money away like that. Then I realized how much I had to learn about real culture, traditional Indian culture, and about Krishna consciousness. So again here another point, Prabhupada always used to say, Krishna's money you should not waste. Krishna's money should always be used only for Krishna's purpose. He used to always say that. And what he used to do? He used to be very particular. Even if the switch is on, the tube light is on, which doesn't consume much electricity, but that also he will switch off and he will do it. You will find many of the disciples of Prabhupada are also like that. When they come in, when they go out of the room, they are very particular to switch off the lights, the fans, everything, and used to go. They want to conserve the energy. They don't want to waste the energy, or waste the money in paying the electricity bill. So like that for many things you will find, Prabhupada was very particular how he was spending money. Because he had money, he was not throwing it away. He was always saying that it is Krishna's money and we have to be extremely careful with Krishna's money, use it only for Krishna's purpose. But here you find Prabhupada was giving the dakshina to the people, to the servants. So now when he was giving dakshina to the servants, the Tamal Krishna, Giraj Maharaj had this question, how is it that he is giving away this money? This is Krishna's money. It was not very clear to him. But it is again coming to the Indian culture, how it is like. When we stay somewhere, when somebody is serving us, we generally try to please him with some, bakshis. We give that, something we give and try to make them happy, So here also you find that I hadn't expected Prabhupada to give Krishna's money away like that. Then I realized how much I had to learn about real culture, traditional Indian culture, and about Krishna consciousness. Later, so what I said earlier, Prabhupada's disciples wanted to stay with Prabhupada, move with Prabhupada, observe Prabhupada very closely to understand and learn from his behavior. Not just from the books, but also how he practically moves with people, how he deals with people, all those things also the disciples wanted to know. Later, Prabhupada wrote to me, Bhogilal Patel is a perfect gentleman. He has got money and also a heart. His son is also good. And in a conversation in Los Angeles, the following year, he appreciated the rationale and culture behind Seth Bhogilal's opulent lifestyle. When Tamala Krishna remarked that Bhogilal had 23 cars just for him. How many cars? 23 cars. No? And his son and his son's wife, Prabhupada explained, yes, they are spending money to save income tax. They have got enough income. So instead of giving to the income tax, they are thinking, why not provide some drivers, some servants, and repair the house every year. In this way, they spend money. It's a good policy. Money is distributed to the poor instead of going to the government's pocket. He has got at least 35 servants. And it is only the father and son and daughter-in-law, Tamal Krishna pointed out. That's all. Prabhupada said, no children even. They gave us some attention. They are very favorable to us, especially the father. And Tamal Krishna, and his son, Pranalal, is also a nice boy. Prabhupada, yes, he is very intelligent. He knows what we are doing. His wife also, that young girl. Yes, very nice. They are actually a little aristocratic, I think. Oh, yes. When I was staying there, that young girl, the daughter-in-law, was always taking care. Swamiji, what do you want? What can I serve you? And Bhogilal was coming daily to talk with me. Pranlal was offering any help that he could. Your secretaries were also treated very nicely. They gave us each a car. That was a wonderful stay. That was when Mrs. Nair surrendered at that house. So Nair's story, all of you know anyway. Nair is a very famous man, in fact. When Prabhupada had arrived in Bombay, Mr. Vakil had contacted Mrs. Nair's solicitor, Mr. Shah, who had confirmed that she didn't want to sell us the land. She has something to buy it for 20. She has someone to buy it for 20 lakhs or more, he said. But practically, she can get any big amount for it. Still, he felt sure that if we were ready to pay 17 lakhs in cash right then, she would go for it. You are just trespassers, Shah stated. You have no claim to be on the land or to buy the land. The court case is coming up, and when it comes up, you will be thrown off the land. It would be better if you just paid the 17 lakhs now and finished up. Earlier we saw someone very favorable to Prabhupada. Now we come across someone who is unfavorable to Prabhupada and Krishna's movement. Prabhupada was not happy with the proposal. He could see that the increase in price was the result of so many lawyers being involved, each wanting his cut. As he later explained, they were thinking, cancel the agreement and take 17 or 20 lakhs from him, and the balance should be divided amongst us. Our tenant, Mrs. Warrior, had been visiting Mrs. Nair along with Mr. Asnani, the lawyer who was our life member and friend, and she had heard that Mrs. Nair was hard-pressed for money. Mr. Nair had taken money from everybody and spent lavishly, she said, and his creditors were demanding payment. Selling the land to us would be mutually beneficial, she had told Mrs. Nair. You need money and they want the land. It is better just to finish up the deal. Otherwise, it will be fighting like this for years. Nobody is gaining anything. And if we give it to a temple, at least in your next birth, you will be benefited. What are you doing? Mr. Asnani had asked Mrs. Nair. You are not getting any money and you are not enjoying the use of the land. Swamiji is very good. He will take care of all your many needs. But Mrs. Nair wasn't convinced. She claimed to have higher offers. They are offering 14, she said. She had said to us. But another person is offering 25. What would you do with 25 lakhs and only one person? Mrs. Warrior had asked. How much money do we require to live in this world? You are the only person who don't have any close relatives. Sad, is it not? There are many people like this. They want money more and more and more and money, but not able to see that their age is also growing simultaneously. When the age is growing, then what happens then? Your death is also coming so close by. And how much do you want to earn? Instead, why not spend the time on the devotional service? Try to please Prabhupada, the entire Guru Parampara and Lord Krishna. That thought doesn't come to them so easily. Instead, they want seeing how to accumulate more money, how to work hard, what Prabhupada has explained in Srimad Bhagavatam and other places. Prabhupada says in Bhagavatam, in his one of his purports, he says, man foolishly is trying to make this place a permanent place. And this place is not at all a permanent place. Man foolishly thinks that he can live permanently here and is working towards that. It's a fact, is it not? So, here also, this lady is expecting 25 lakhs and she is only single. And is she just budding? No, she's also getting old. And she wants the 25 lakhs. So here says, So what would you do with 25 lakhs and only one person? Mrs. Warrior asked, how much money do we require to live in this world? You are the only person. You don't have any close relatives. Yes, that is true, Mrs. Nair had replied. But so much sickness is there and I really want cash now. 14 then, Mrs. Nair had countered. You can ask more, but don't expect 25. And everything in one installment. If that is the only condition, don't worry. If you want tomorrow, they will give you money. So will you talk to them? Mrs. Nair had agreed at last to meet with Prabhupada. Yes, Prabhupada said when he heard of Mrs. Nair's willingness to see him, bring her to me and I will speak to her. She is my daughter. Tell her, Prabhupada said that, tell her that you are my daughter and I love you. This is his compassion. This is Prabhupada's compassion. Now the qualities, great compassion he had for all the people. He never distinguished. He was compassionate to all the fallen souls. And although Mr. Nair and Mrs. Nair, they were working against Prabhupada, advised by so many advocates, still in spite of that, Prabhupada was compassionate towards Mrs. Nair and he said, let her come. She is my daughter. That's great. He didn't suspect her at that time, That's the thing. You are my daughter and I love you. Mrs. Warrior and Mr. Asnani conveyed his message to Mrs. Nair, and it was arranged that she would come and meet Prabhupada the following night. In the meantime, however, Mrs. Nair's solicitors were demanding an immediate response. We have to know today, they told us, you pay 17 lakhs and settle up, or we are going to drive you out. You tell us yes or no, otherwise it's all finished. So what to do? Prabhupada asked, but we didn't know what to say. Finally, he told us, okay, we will pay. Actually, I don't even want this land, but because I have invited Radha and Krishna to come here, it will be a great insult if they are driven away. And I could not bear that. So Prabhupada's direct dealings with Radha Krishna, where he had promised and he wanted to fulfill the promise. This is again another great lesson that we have to understand. How many times you also talk to Radha Krishna, Radha Madhava, RadhaRasbihariTemple, pray certain things, say that we will do this, we will do that, all those things. But once our work is over, we very easily forget. Or if there are lots of difficulties, we give it up, not having full faith whether it will be done or not. But Prabhupada was not like that. Prabhupada said, I have promised this land for Radha Madhava. I have told them that I will build a temple here for you. So I cannot give it up. Whatever may be the difficulty, I will still continue with it. We were supposed to give our answer to Mr. Vakil the following day. Prabhupada said that we should prepare a draft of a letter agreeing to take the land for the increased amount, show it to Mr. Vakil and ask for his advice. But we should put some mistakes in the letter so that Mr. Vakil would have to ask us to make corrections. And then we would tell him that we had to take the letter back to retype it and would bring it back. That would at least give us one more day to maneuver. I was struck by how intelligent and diplomatic, how clever Prabhupada was. And while all of this was going on, he was holding programs and giving lectures practically every night. Bhogilal Patel and his son Pranlal had arranged a gathering of aristocratic people from Malabar Hill on the terrace of their home. But that evening, when Prabhupada was on the terrace about to lecture, he was told that Mrs. Nair had arrived and immediately went down to his room to see her, leaving us to continue the program without him. In his room, Prabhupada sent everyone out except Tamal Krishna, Shyam Sundar, Mr. Asnani, Mrs. Warrior, and Mrs. Nair, and then closed the doors. Then he spoke to Mrs. Nair with a kind-hearted tenderness. You are my daughter, he told her. I will take care of you. Mrs. Nair bowed down at his feet and burst into tears. I'm sorry, she implored. Please forgive me. I didn't intend all these things to happen. Now I just want to give you the land and be peaceful again. Prabhupada touched her head gently. Don't worry, he consoled her. I will see to all of your needs for the rest of your life. If she surrendered to him, he was telling her he would give her all protection. It was an important lesson for me too, that anyone who surrendered to Prabhupada would be completely protected by him. Hearing of this exchange, I asked myself, why am I hesitating? This woman is just surrendering to him now, and Prabhupada is giving her complete protection, while I have been hanging around in the movement for years and have never really surrendered. It was a good lesson. So you see, this is one of the things that we have been told, is it not? Once we take Diksha, what do we promise? That I'm surrendering to you completely. That's what we tell our Guru Maharaj. We are surrendering once we have taken the Diksha. That surrendering in what sense? In full. Mind, intelligence, mind, body, everything we surrender to the Guru. And it is up to Guru to use us the way he wants. That's what Prabhupada's disciples, all of them did that. They surrendered. But later on some way went out also. That's a different matter. But all those who stayed till the end, they really surrendered. They surrendered just not by word, but by their actions, by their mind. They are fully prepared to do whatever Prabhupada wanted them to do, without questioning. But that doesn't mean that they did not apply their intelligence. Prabhupada has also said that, you have to also apply your intelligence when I ask you to do something, and not just blindly do that. Apply your intelligence, understand what I want, understand exactly what my requirement is, and then fulfill it. Like Prabhupada was told by his Guru, I want you to preach in English. Whenever you get time, print books in English. He said that. That doesn't mean that Prabhupada was just blindly doing. Prabhupada applied his own mind and he did so many things in the printing itself. And he brought out several ways of how to promote it and give it to the people to read the books. He did all those things. So, surrendering is the most critical thing in devotional service. The minute we surrender to our Guru Maharaj, to our Guru and the Guru Parampara, our life is fully taken care of. There is no doubt about that. And that's what Giriraj Maharaj is also saying. I ask myself, why am I hesitating? The woman is just surrendering to him now. And Prabhupada is giving her complete protection. While I have been hanging around in the movement for years and I have never really surrendered. It was a good lesson. Prabhupada told Mrs. Nair that he still accepted the terms she had proposed, that he pay the balance of 12 lakhs for a total of 14 plus an extra 50,000 rupees as compensation for the delay. And she agreed. Prabhupada was fully prepared. He had already had Tamal Krishna type up a draft of a new settlement, and as soon as Mrs. Nair agreed, he pulled it out. He told Mr. Asnani to go over the terms of the conveyance with Mrs. Nair and make whatever changes they saw fit right then and there. While the new agreement was being typed up, Prabhupada went back up to the roof and delivered a beautiful lecture. When he was done, he rose from his seat and went back downstairs. And he and Mrs. Nair signed the document with November 1st as a tentative deadline for the signing of the final conveyance. The next step was tricky, since we couldn't inform Mrs. Nair's lawyer or our lawyers or any of the lawyers serving as go-betweens. They were being cut out of the transactions and would try to stop it. And Prabhupada was not going to leave Bombay. Twice he had made the mistake of trying to let us do this conveyance. Tamal Krishna recounted, and both times we were unable to. This time he did everything himself. The next day, sitting on his asana behind his low table, Srila Prabhupada was talking with Gargamuni and Achyutananda, awaiting the arrival of our American bank manager. He was touching on the same themes, warning his disciples of the dangers of working hard simply to get money and enjoy the senses, and explaining our mission, which we were collecting, and how to avoid criticism. And explaining our mission, why we were collecting, and how to avoid criticism. Our mission, Prabhupada said, is to teach that you are simply wasting your time. Take to Krishna consciousness. That is the only lesson. No. Take to Krishna consciousness. The minute you have known that Krishna consciousness is the best for us in our life, immediately we should take it up. That is our only business. And the next business is that those who cannot directly take to the process should help the movement. Therefore, we go door to door to connect them with this movement, life member. People are misunderstanding. They have no other good business. Transcendental fraud, giving us some book and taking money and eating and sleeping. They are thinking like that. So, we should preach strongly, and they should know that we also preach. Tamal Krishna said. Yes, they should know. No, Prabhupada is saying, yes, they should know that it is for their benefit we are making them life members, not for our benefit. And that should be the motive. We should deal with them so that they may develop their Krishna consciousness. If you simply make it a point, somehow or the other, take some money from them and let them go to hell, that is not. That is transcendental fraud. What do you think, Gargamuni? Gargamuni replied, yes, we have to preach. Prabhupada continued, yes, if by the dress of a sannyasi you take some money and eat and sleep, then it is a transcendental fraud. Just like others are toiling, we are getting money by some dress. That's all. They are getting money by laboring hard, and we are getting money. In India, mostly the sannyasis do that. The priests also do that. This is our profession. My Guru Maharaja said that instead of earning livelihood by showing the deity in the temple, it is better to take the profession of a sweeper in the street and live honestly. He said like that. The sweeper is working hard, toiling and getting some money and living. This is honest living. So this is Dongi Babas and all this, fraud sannyasis. Actually, they have brought a bad name to the entire our spiritual activities in India. Earlier, in the earlier days, it was not like that. The spiritualists were true spiritualists. But over a period of time, everything degenerated. And you find a lot of people wanting money only for their personal benefit. That is not real spirituality. But then it degenerated and people get fooled by such people. And once you get fooled, then everything, all the transcendental activities, any sannyasi comes, you start looking at him with suspicion. It happens to us also. In the earlier years, sometimes in 70s, 80s also, whenever an ISKCON devotee used to come, people used to become very cautious, They don't want to talk to ISKCON devotees at the time. I have seen it myself. They don't want to talk. They will say that, oh, this is an ISKCON guy coming. We need to be careful. Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, they will say, and they'll take money from us. That's what they're always looking for. ISKCON is always interested in taking money. This is the impression people generally got, and even now some people have got that impression. It's not fully free. We have not become fully free from that. That's because some people have gone, collected money. After taking donation, they forget that, those people. Follow up, take the money, and then forget. But that should not be the aim. Prabhupada has never said that anywhere. Prabhupada has very clearly said that From whomsoever you are taking, whatever you are taking, you have to see how to preach Krishna consciousness to them, how to make them devotees. If they are not becoming devotees, doesn't matter, at least make them favorable to our Krishna consciousness and favorable to ISKCON. That's what he says. Exactly, there's the same thing here. Prabhupada is telling Gargamuni and Tamal Krishna Maharaj. Just then the bank manager arrived, accompanied by an Indian lady, Bhanu, who worked under him. The manager was being called back to America and he wanted Bhanu to help us in his absence. After some preliminary discussion of spiritual life, Bhanu told Prabhupada that people might find Juhu far away and hard to preach. Yeah, because Juhu was not developed at that time like this. In the 70s and all, if you had come here, many of you would not, may have, some of you may have. The sea was very close by and there was hardly anybody. This entire area, in fact, the last stop was only about Santa Cruz. That's why it was known as Santa Cruz Airport at that time. So the Santa Cruz Airport was there. That is the last. People will come this side only to go to the airport. Otherwise, this side and all, all the bootleggers and others, they all used to stay this side. So it was not a very favorable place for people to come in those days, in the 70s. But now it is totally different. You don't have place to live and it's so expensive place also. Where is this? Yeah. So, in Juhu, so Prabhupada said, in Juhu there are many people. Juhu people are not coming here and the people here will not go there. Any part of Bombay is itself a big city. But where will we get such big land in the city? Our property is 20,000 square yards and by the Juhu beach, for this facility, yes, and a new town is growing here, which turned out to be true. This entire area, after ISKCON came, this entire area started developing so much. Prabhupada asked the bank manager if he had been to Juhu, and the man replied that he used to live here in a large white 6-story building on the beach, which Prabhupada passed on his morning walks. How do you like that place, Juhu? Prabhupada asked. Very much, the manager said. Quiet, peaceful. After a day of work in the bank, it's a nice place to retreat to. I take the train. It is 33 minutes by train between Churchgate and Juhu. So where's the difficulty? Prabhupada turned to ask his disciples. Such a responsible officer, bank manager, coming and going, and you sannyasis cannot come and go? He has got responsible duties. He has to arrive in the office exactly on time. Prabhupada asked the manager if other bank officers might be living in Juhu, and he replied that National and Greenlace Bank officers were there, and that several British companies had offices there as well. Soon thereafter, we all left the Shivner flat for Juhu. Prabhupada moved into Mr. Sethi's house, which was still under construction in the Juhu scheme. It was spacious and well built, just not completely finished. The marble wasn't polished, and the temporary lighting was dim, and Mr. Sethi and his family had not yet moved in. Prabhupada could receive visitors there, and at his direction, I arranged a meeting with Mr. Shantilal Mehta, the shrewd, seasoned businessman who with his son ran S. Chaganlal and Brothers, which had a claim on the Juhu land. An elderly Jain, the older Mr. Mehta, came dressed in a traditional white Indian suit, vest and cap. Prabhupada remained seated on his asana. Almost immediately after entering, as if to catch Prabhupada off guard, Mr. Mehta said, I understand you are in negotiations with Mrs. Nair. So, who will take the land, you or me? Prabhupada sat up straight, looked him in the eye and said, I will. He said, well, what about my claim? Mehta objected. My claim is for 6 lakhs, a hugely inflated figure. My claim is for 12 lakhs, Prabhupada countered. If Mehta wanted the land, he would have to pay Prabhupada 12 lakhs to withdraw. Mr. Mehta could see that he was up against a smart, tough fighter, not just some simply elderly sadhu. His eyes opened wider, and his whole demeanor seemed to change to become humbler and more respectful. So Prabhupada was very clear. Prabhupada was not just a sadhu, a very innocent. Prabhupada also knew how to deal with people. That's very important for all of us to know, because when you go out to preach, there's so many oversmart people, they come, They want to see how they can pull our legs, how to put us down. All these things also happen, So some smart person who has read here and there, or he was just simply heard Bhagavad-gita, he will try to advise us also. So like that, Prabhupada also had such situations, and Prabhupada knew how to handle such people. So that is also equally important for us when we are dealing in this world with people, whether it is for preaching purpose or for raising funds for the temple or for any other activity connected with Krishna consciousness. We should know how to deal with people also in a manner that wherever someone has to be put in place, he has to be put in place. Wherever we have to be humble, we need to be humble. Wherever we need to be tough, we need to be tough. So, Prabhupada said, my claim is for 12 lakhs. Prabhupada counted. If Mehta wanted the land, he would have to pay Prabhupada 12 lakhs to withdraw. Mr. Mehta could see that he was up against a smart tough fighter, not just a simple elderly sadhu. His eyes opened wider and his whole demeanor seemed to change, to become humbler and more respectful. Prabhupada began preaching to him, we will use the land for a good cause. We will make a temple. Mr. Mehta agreed to a meeting with Prabhupada and Mrs. Nair to negotiate how much she would have to pay him to get him to withdraw his claim. According to the sales agreement, Prabhupada could hold back the majority of his payments until Chagandal withdrew its claim in the High Court. Satisfied with the arrangement, Mr. Mehta offered his respects to Prabhupada and left the room. As he escorted him down the stairs to his car, he kept shaking his head and saying, your Guru Maharaja is Pakka. He is a real Guru Maharaja. He is Pakka. One morning, Prabhupada was sitting in his room on the second floor, absorbed in discussion with friends and disciples about the struggle for the land. Suddenly, a muscular, sinew laborer appeared at the door, paused, and with all his eyes on him, entered the room without introduction. The man's complexion was dark, and he wore only a small faded cloth around his waist. I was apprehensive. He walked towards Prabhupada, placed a bunch of flowers on his desk, bowed down, looked at him, and walked out. Very suspensefully written, it is. There's someone describing, so we'll be like this, but he was very humble. Prabhupada was so moved by the man's simple act of devotion that for several moments he could not speak. He just looked down and closed his eyes. Finally, with a choked voice, he said, such a simple man. Yet somehow he understood that a saintly person is here, and he gathered some flowers to offer. In the Bhagavad-gita, Lord Krishna says, Patram pushpam palam toyam yome bhaktya prayachati tad aham bhakti upahritam ashnami prayatatmanaha. If one offers me a leaf or flower with love and devotion, I will accept it. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and even his heart is touched by such devotion. What to speak of an insignificant living entity like me? How much more will I feel overwhelmed? Prabhupada used to get moved by such simple acts, but very honest and sincere acts, not anything people, and he could very easily distinguish between who is sincere, honest, and someone who is dishonest. That was Prabhupada's great quality, where he could easily distinguish. Sometimes we get fooled, by people. Those who are dishonest, they behave like a very honest person. Sometimes we get fooled, but Prabhupada was not like that. Prabhupada could very easily distinguish between a honest and a dishonest person. I'll just... Prabhupada arranged... Can I continue? Shall I stop it here? 9 o'clock. What is the program like? Prabhu? Yeah, that is all. That's the thing. Okay, so with this I will stop here for the day. Thank you. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Thank you very much.